Commander Yultheri stood on the bridge of his massive warship, looking out at the stars through the thick glass windows. His four purple eyes moved slowly across the darkness of space, watching the small lights that were other ships in his fleet. He had been fighting wars for 30 years now, and he knew what to expect from every battle. The tall alien commander had gray skin that looked like old metal, and scars covered his arms from fights long ago. Each scar told a story of a different enemy he had faced. The crystalline shardlings had given him the long white mark on his left arm when their razor-sharp weapons cut through his armor. The gas creatures called Nebula Lords had burned the circular scar on his shoulder with their acid clouds. The robot armies known as the Iron Swarm had left the jagged marks on his hands when he fought their mechanical soldiers hand to hand. Every species fought in their own way, and Yultheri had learned all their patterns. The shardlings always attacked in perfect geometric shapes, like living math problems that wanted to kill you. They moved in triangles and squares, never breaking formation, never surprising anyone. The Nebula Lords flowed like water, changing their attack plans like clouds changing shape in the wind. But even they followed rules that Yultheri could predict. The Iron Swarm calculated everything with computer brains, making the same logical choices every time. "Commander," said his aide, a younger Vexian with bright green eyes, "the new allies have arrived." Yultheri turned to look at his tactical screen, where dozens of small dots represented the newest members of the Galactic Coalition. Humans. He had read their files, studied their combat records, and watched videos of their training exercises. They seemed ordinary in every way that mattered for war. Their ships appeared on his display, with strange names written in their Earth language. The largest vessel was called Dahan and was commanded by someone named Captain Jinwu. Another ship called Hambach had a Captain Soyan in charge. There were 27 human ships in total, all painted in simple gray and blue colors that made them look like basic military vessels. Yultheri had seen the humans' physical test results. They were not particularly strong compared to most galactic species. A Vexian soldier could lift twice what a human could lift. Their reaction times were average, not slow, but not impressively fast either. Their eyes could see fewer colors than most aliens, and their hearing was limited to a narrow range of sounds. Their weapons technology was functional but not advanced. Simple laser cannons, basic missile systems, and standard energy shields. Nothing that would make any experienced commander worried or excited. Even their tactics were borrowed from older galactic civilizations, with minor modifications that showed they were still learning how to fight in space. "What do you think of our new allies?" asked his aide, studying the human formation as it approached their position. Yultheri watched the human ships move into a neat line, maintaining proper distance between vessels and following all standard military protocols. "They follow orders well," he said finally. "Their formation flying is adequate. They appear disciplined and organized." The human communication channels were quiet and professional. When Captain Jinwu contacted the flagship, his voice was calm and respectful. "Commander Yultheri, this is Captain Jinwu of the human fleet. We are ready to receive battle assignments and coordinate with your tactical plan." Even their language was simple and direct, without the flowery diplomatic speech that some species used or the harsh military barking that others preferred. Just basic, clear communication that got the job done, without wasting time. Yultheri pulled up the mission briefing on his command screen. The Crimson Raiders, a large group of pirates, had been attacking civilian ships and trade stations in this part of space. Intelligence reports showed they had at least 60 ships and were using an old asteroid mining facility as their base. It would be a significant battle, but not beyond the capabilities of his experienced fleet. "Assign the humans to defensive positions," Yultheri told his tactical officer. "Standard support formation around the medical ships and supply vessels. This operation requires experienced leadership for the main assault." His aide nodded and began transmitting orders to the human fleet. Yultheri watched as the human ships smoothly moved into their assigned positions, maintaining perfect spacing and alignment. They asked no questions about the orders and made no suggestions about alternative strategies. This was exactly what he expected from a newer species in the coalition. They were eager to help, willing to follow directions, and smart enough to know they should learn from more experienced civilizations before trying to lead battles themselves. It was a sensible approach that showed they understood their place in the galactic military hierarchy. As the fleet prepared to jump to hyperspace toward the pirate stronghold, Yoltheri felt a familiar calm confidence that came before routine military operation. He had fought pirates before, dealt with hostage situations, and handled complex multi-species fleet coordination. The humans would provide adequate support. His experienced officers would execute proven tactics, and the Crimson Raiders would be defeated within a standard day. The commander settled into his command chair, ready for another predictable victory in his long career of successful battles. The Corvin Nebula stretched across space like a giant purple cloud filled with tiny stars. Hidden inside this beautiful but dangerous area, the Crimson Raiders had built their secret base on an old asteroid that once was used for mining precious metals. Intelligence reports said they had been attacking peaceful trading ships for 6 months, stealing cargo, and taking prisoners to sell as slaves. Yoltheri watched his fleet drop out of hyperspace at the edge of the nebula. The familiar feeling of a battle about to begin made his blood move faster through his veins. His tactical screen lit up with red dots showing enemy positions scattered around a large space station called New Prosperity that the pirates had captured 3 days ago. Enemy count confirmed, reported his sensor officer, a female Vexian with silver markings on her face. 67 hostile vessels of various sizes. They had positioned themselves around the civilian station in a defensive shell formation. Yoltheri nodded as he studied the enemy arrangement. The pirates were using classic intimidation tactics, surrounding their prize with overwhelming numbers to make any rescue attempt seem impossible. But he had seen this pattern many times before. Pirates always thought that having more ships meant they would win, but they never learned how to use those ships together effectively. "Begin standard assault formation," he ordered. "Vexian heavy cruisers will engage the outer defensive line. Altrian missile ships will provide long-range support from Coordinate 77 Alpha. Human vessels will maintain protective perimeter around our support ships." The battle started exactly as every pirate fight Yoltheri had ever commanded. The Crimson Raiders charged forward in messy groups, their ships painted in bright reds and oranges, firing wildly at anything that moved. Their captains shouted threats and curses over open communication channels, trying to scare the coalition forces with loud voices and crude language. Yoltheri's experienced fleet responded with calm precision. His heavy cruisers fired their main weapons in coordinated volleys, each blast timed perfectly to hit pirate ships when their shields were weakest. The Altrian allies launched waves of smart missiles that curve around obstacles to find their targets. Within the first hour, 12 pirate vessels had been destroyed, and 8 more were drifting powerless through space. The human ships followed their orders without any problems. Captain Jinwoo kept his vessel Daeon in perfect position to protect the medical ship Bright Hope from any pirates who might break through the main battle line. Commander Sion moved her ship Hanbok smoothly between supply runs, delivering ammunition and replacement parts to the larger warships that were doing the heavy fighting. "Human performance is acceptable," Yoltheri noted his aide. "They maintain good discipline under fire and follow tactical instructions precisely." He watched the human communication channels on his secondary screen. Their officers spoke in calm, professional voices even when pirate ships fired at them. Captain Jinwoo gave clear, simple orders to his crew. Maintain shield strength at 60%. Prepare medical bay for incoming casualties. Keep defensive weapons ready, but do not engage unless directly attacked. This was exactly what Yoltheri expected from a developing military species. They stayed in their assigned roles, did not try to be heroes, and let the experienced fighters handle the dangerous work. It was smart behavior that showed they understood their limitations. The pirate forces began to fall back toward the captured station as more of their ships were destroyed. Some of them tried desperate ramming attacks, steering their damaged vessels directly at coalition ships in final acts of destruction. But Yoltheri's fleet was ready for these tactics too. His gunners picked off the attacking ships before they could reach their targets. "Commander," his communications officer called out, "we are receiving a transmission from the pirate leader aboard the space station." The main screen flickered and showed the ugly face of a creature that looked like it had been put together from parts of different animals. This was Crexmore, leader of the Crimson Raiders, known throughout this sector for his cruelty and love of causing pain to innocent people. Coalition dogs, Crexmore snarled, showing teeth that had been filed as sharp points. You think you have one because you destroyed some of my ships? I still have something you want more than victory. The camera moved to show hundreds of frightened civilians crowded together in what used to be the station's main shopping area. Families huddled close to each other, holding their children and looking around with scared eyes. There were humans, Vexians, Altarians, and members of a dozen other species who had been traveling on trading ships when the pirates attacked. You have 1 standard hour to withdraw all your forces, Crexmore continued, his voice getting louder and more threatening. Leave the system completely, or I will begin killing prisoners, starting with the smallest ones first. Yoltheri felt his stomach tighten as he realized the situation had suddenly become much more complicated. This was no longer a simple military battle against pirates. Now innocent lives were at stake, and every decision he made could result in the deaths of peaceful civilians who had done nothing wrong except be in the wrong place at the wrong time. Yoltheri stared at the screen, showing hundreds of terrified faces pressed together in the captured space station. His military mind immediately began calculating options like computer processing data. Galactic Coalition Protocol 7, Alpha, was very clear about hostage situations involving civilian populations. Tactical analysis, he ordered his staff. His weapons officer, a veteran with 3 purple service medals, spoke first. Direct assault on the station would result in massive civilian casualties. The pirates had positioned explosive charges at key structural points. Any major weapons fire could cause the entire facility to break apart. His intelligence specialist added more bad news. Long-range scanners show the pirates have moved the hostages to the station's central core, surrounded by their remaining military personnel. A rescue operation would require fighting through 7 levels of armed resistance. Yoltheri nodded slowly. The mathematics of the situation were brutal but simple. A direct attack would kill more innocent people than it would save. Strategic withdrawal followed by a carefully planned rescue mission was a logical choice. It would take time, perhaps weeks to organize properly, but it would minimize casualties among both coalition forces and civilian hostages. Prepare withdrawal formation, he began to order, but stopped when his communications officer held up a warning hand. Sir, Crexmore is making another transmission. He says he wants to show us he is serious about his threat. The main screen flickered back to the pirate leader's scarred face. Behind him, several of his followers dragged a small figure forward to the crowd of prisoners. Yoltheri's 4 eyes focused on the tiny form being pulled toward the camera. It was a human child, a little girl who could not have been more than 7 years old. Her dark hair was messy and her clothes were torn, but she was not crying. Instead, she looked directly into the camera with wide, brave eyes that reminded Yoltheri of young soldiers he had known who faced death without fear. This little pest belongs to some merchants who thought they were smart enough to hide from my raiders, Crexmore said, grabbing the child's arm roughly. Her name is Suri. Say hello to the nice coalition officers, Lil Suri. The girl's voice was small but clear. Hello. Please help my mommy and daddy. Yoltheri felt something cold move through his chest. In 30 years of warfare, he had seen planets burned and entire species enslaved. He had watched cities destroyed and civilizations erased from existence. But something about this one small voice asking for help cut through all his military training and tactical calculations. You have 57 minutes to begin your withdrawal, Crexmore continued, pulling out a large energy weapon that glowed red with deadly power. If I see even one coalition ship moving toward this station when the time runs out, Lil Suri here will be the first to die. The pirate leader raised his weapon toward the child's head. Yoltheri opened his mouth to order an immediate retreat, to save the lives of his fleet, so they could return later with a proper rescue plan. But before he could speak, Crexmore pulled the trigger. The energy blast was quick and clean. Little Suri fell to the metal floor without making a sound. Her brave eyes closed forever, and her small body became completely still. For a moment, the entire coalition fleet was silent. No one spoke on any communication channel. Even the background noise of ship engines and computer systems seemed to disappear. The universe itself appeared to pause in shock at what had just happened. Then Yolthari heard something he had never experienced in 3 decades of commanding military fleets. From a human ship scattered throughout his formation came a sound that was not quite screaming and not quite roaring, but something far more frightening than either. It was a collective noise of pure rage that seemed to come from every human throat at the same time. "What is happening to the human vessels?" his center officer asked with confusion in her voice. Yolthari looked at his tactical display and saw the human ships beginning to move, not randomly or in panic, but with a coordination that was somehow both perfect and terrifying. Every human vessel was turning toward the pirate fleet at exactly the same time, their engines glowing brighter than military regulations allowed. "Dehan to all human vessels," came Captain Jinwa's voice over the communication system. But it was not the same calm, professional voice Yolthari had been hearing all day. This voice was cold as deep space and sharp as a laser blade. "Surrey Protocol is now active. Repeat, Surrey Protocol is now active." "What is Surrey Protocol?" Yolthari demanded of Lieutenant Donghi, his human liaison officer. The young human's face had completely changed. All warmth and emotion had drained away, leaving behind something that looked like a machine programmed for destruction. When Donghi spoke, his voice carried the same deadly coldness as his captain's. "Commander," he said slowly, "Surrey Protocol is what happens when someone hurts our children. It is something you pray to whatever god you believe in that you never have to see." Yolthari turned back to his tactical screen and watched in growing horror as the human fleet abandoned all defensive positions and began accelerating directly toward the heavily armed pirate forces that outnumbered them 3-1. The transformation was immediate and terrifying. Across all 27 human ships, every communication channel erupted with the same chilling sound that Yolthari had heard moments before. It was not screaming or shouting, but something deeper and more frightening. It sounded like the noise a predatory animal might make when protecting its young, but multiplied by thousands of human voices speaking as one. "All human vessels, weapons hot." Captain Jinwa's voice cut through the chaos with deadly calm. "Maximum engine power. Override all safety protocols. We're going to get our people back." Yolthari watched his tactical screen in disbelief as the human ships broke away from their defensive positions. They were not moving randomly or in panic. Instead, they flew with perfect coordination, as if all 27 captains were sharing the same mind. Their engines glowed white-hot as they pushed their reactors beyond safe operating limits. "They are going to destroy themselves," his weapons officer said with shock. No ship can maintain that power output for more than a few minutes without exploding. But the human ships did not explode. They accelerated faster than their design specifications said they could, heading straight toward the pirate fleet that still surrounded the captured space station. The largest pirate vessels immediately turned their weapons toward the approaching humans, filling space with deadly energy beams and explosive missiles. Captain Jinwa's ship Dehan flew directly through the incoming fire, as if the deadly weapons were harmless lights. Several direct hits struck his hull, blasts that should have torn the vessel apart, but somehow the ship kept flying. Its armor glowed red-hot from the impacts, but it did not slow down or change course. "Impossible," Yolthari whispered. Their ship should be dead. Those were direct hits from heavy plasma cannons. Lieutenant Donghi stood beside the commander's chair, his face still showing that frightening emptiness. "When humans activate Surrey Protocol, Commander, our ships become harder to kill." "Much harder." The Dehan smashed directly into a large pirate cruiser, ramming through its center section like a missile made of solid metal. The pirate ship broke apart in a massive explosion that lit up the entire battle area. But instead of being destroyed by the collision, the human vessel emerged from the other side of the wreckage, damaged but still fighting. Commander Soyen's ship Hambach performed maneuvers that violated every law of physics Yolthari had learned in military academy. It spun and twisted through space, dodging between enemy ships while firing at weapons with accuracy that seemed impossible. Her gunners were hitting targets that were behind cover, shooting around corners and through narrow gaps that no normal pilot could navigate. "How are they doing this?" his tactical officer asked with fear in his voice. Their ships are moving like they know where every enemy vessel will be before it gets there. More human vessels join the assault. Major Hyansu's Marines launched themselves toward the space station in small boarding pods, but they were not aiming for the docking bays or weak entry points that military doctrine required. Instead, they fired their pods directly at the station's thick armored hull, intending to smash through solid metal walls by force alone. "That is suicide," Yoltheri's aide said. "Those boarding pods cannot penetrate military-grade armor plating." But the pods did penetrate. One after another, they crashed through the station's outer shell like bullets through paper. Explosions erupted across the facility's surface as human Marines blasted their way inside, creating their own entrances where none had existed before. The pirate fleet, which had seemed confident and organized just minutes earlier, began to fall apart under the human assault. Their ships scattered in all directions as captains realized they were not fighting a normal military force. Several pirate vessels tried to retreat, but human fighters chased them down with relentless determination. Yoltheri watched Captain Minsu's small fighter craft pursue a fleeing pirate ship that was twice its size. The human pilot followed his target through the dangerous asteroid field surrounding the space station, fly between rocks that would crush his tiny vessel if he made even the smallest mistake. When the pirate ship tried to hide behind a large asteroid, Captain Minsu flew his fighter completely around the rock and attacked from the opposite side. "They are not following any tactical doctrine," his intelligence officer reported with confusion. "Every military manual says you should retreat when facing superior numbers and firepower. The humans are doing exactly the opposite." Lieutenant Dong He finally spoke again, his voice still carrying that cold, deadly tone. "Commander, you are trying to understand human military tactics. But Surrey Protocol is not about tactics or strategy or following rules. When someone kills our innocent, especially our children, we stop being soldiers following orders. We become something much more dangerous." On the main screen, Yoltheri could see Major Hyansu's Marines fighting their way through the space station's corridors. They moved like unstoppable forces of nature, smashing through armed resistance that should have stopped them. Pirates who had seemed confident and cruel just hours earlier now ran in terror from human soldiers who fought with no concern for their own survival. "What do you become?" Yoltheri asked quietly. Dong He looked at him with eyes that held no mercy or forgiveness. "We become the thing that monsters have nightmares about. Commander, we become human." For hours after the battle began, silence filled the Corvin Nebula. The Crimson Raiders no longer existed as a fighting force. Their ships floated dead in space, torn apart by weapons fire or crushed by ramming attacks that should have been impossible to survive. The space station, New Prosperity, was secure, its corridors filled with rescued civilians and the bodies of pirates who had chosen to fight rather than surrender. Yoltheri stood in the medical bay of his flagship, staring at damage reports that made no sense according to everything he knew about warfare. The human fleet had suffered injuries that should have killed every person aboard their ships. Yet, somehow, most of them were still alive, still functional, still ready to fight if needed. Captain Jinwoo lay on a medical bed nearby, his body covered with bandages and connected to machines that monitored his vital signs. The human captain had suffered burns from energy weapons, broken bones from ship collisions, and internal damage that would have killed most species. But his eyes were still alert, still filled with that cold fire that had terrified the pirates. "How?" Yoltheri asked simply. It was the only question that mattered now. Jinwoo was quiet for a long moment, looking at something he held in his bandaged hand. It was a small photograph showing a family of 4 humans standing together outside a trading ship. The father wore a merchant's uniform. The mother held a baby, and between them stood a little girl with dark hair and brave eyes. Little Suri, before the pirates took everything away from her. "Commander," Jinwoo said finally, his voice still carrying echoes of the deadly calm that controlled him during battle. "In our language, we have a word called Jong. It means the connections between people that go deeper than friendship, stronger than duty, more important than our own lives." He paused to cough, and Yoltheri saw blood on the human's lips. By all medical logic, Captain Jinwoo should have been unconscious or dead from his injuries, yet he continued speaking with perfect clarity. "When someone threatens our Jong, when they hurt the innocent people we are sworn to protect, something changes inside us. We stop calculating odds or worrying about survival. We stop being soldiers following military protocols. We become something that has only one purpose. Major Hyunsu appeared in the doorway of the medical bay, his armor still black with smoke from the fighting aboard the space station. His helmet was cracked, his weapons were empty, and his left arm hung at an odd angle that suggested broken bones. But he walked with steady steps and clear purpose. "The station is secure," he reported to Captain Jinwoo. "All civilians have been evacuated to safety. The pirates who survived have surrendered unconditionally." He paused and pulled something from his damaged armor. "Suri's parents wanted me to give you this." Major Hyunsu held out a small pendant made of metal and colored stones. It was a traditional Korean charm meant to protect children from harm, the kind of thing loving parents would give to their daughter before a long journey through dangerous space. Yoltheri accepted the pendant with hands that shook slightly. The metal was still warm, as if it remembered being held by small fingers that would never touch anything again. "What did she die for?" he asked quietly. Captain Jinwoo struggled to sit up in his medical bed, ignoring the protests of the machines monitoring his health. "She died because evil people thought they could use fear and cruelty to get what they wanted. She died because they believed that threatening innocent lives would make us back down and leave them alone." Commander Sion entered the medical bay, her uniform torn and her face marked with cuts from flying debris when her ship had been hit by enemy fire. Like the others, she should have been in critical condition. Yet she moved with the same determined strength. "They were wrong about us," she said simply. "They thought humans would calculate the odds like other species, decide that saving our ships was more important than saving civilian lives. They thought we would retreat and let them keep their hostages." Yoltheri looked around at the injured human officers, trying to understand what he was seeing. "Your tactics made no sense. You should all be dead. Your ship should have been destroyed. The mathematics of the battle were impossible." Major Hyunsu smiled, but there was no humor in it. "Commander, you keep trying to understand this with mathematics and military theory. But when humans activate Suri Protocol, we stop thinking about what is possible or impossible. We only think about what is necessary." "And what was necessary?" Yoltheri asked. "Justice," Captain Jinwoo said quietly. "Not the kind that comes from courts and laws, but the kind that comes from the heart. The kind that says when you hurt our innocent, when you threaten our children, there is no place in the universe where you can hide from us." Yoltheri held the small pendant up to the light, watching it sparkle with colors that reminded him of hope and love and all the good things that people fight to protect. For the first time in 30 years of commanding military forces, he understood that some battles were not about strategy or territory or resources. Sometimes battles were about deciding what kind of universe people wanted to live in. And when humans made that decision, they became unstoppable. "I will recommend to High Command," he said slowly, "that humans should never be considered ordinary allies. You are something far more dangerous than that." "What are we?" Commander Suyon asked. Yoltheri looked at their injured but unbroken faces and gave the only answer that made sense. "You are the guardians that protect the innocent from monsters. And monsters should be very afraid of you.